Hello, everyone. Hello. Welcome back from break. I wanted to thank Dell Tech for sponsoring that break. My name is Dr. Diane Janicek, and I'm really excited to present the next panel. But before I do that, I want to thank Debbie Salas and, of course, Susan Bernstein for talking about her boss playbook, where we all got to shake a little bit, right? Which was great, so thank you, Susan. And now I get the exciting news to announce the next winner of the Support UIC Prize. You ready? Okay, Deepika Saluja. Good. You get to go to the Cyber Guild merch table and pick up your prize. So if she's not here, they can please share that. So that's exciting. Don't forget to do your polls for now on as well. You get considered. So now I get to mention, why do I support UIC? Well, first of all, I'm here on behalf of Capital Technology University. I'm a board member for Capital Technology University, where I got my PhD, little plug for them. I was the inaugural executive director for the Center for Women in Cyber, and they started teaming with the Cyber Guild when I asked them that a few years ago, and they never looked back, and they're so excited to support the Cyber Guild and UIC every year. So thank you, Capital Technology University, for your support. And of course, I support UIC because you're all so smart and fun and engaging, and we like to have a good time together. So now I get to introduce the next panel. The topic is Next Gen Cyber Defense, AI, Quantum, and Drive for Resilience. You get to hear about the rise of quantum and proactive resilience, which is all the rage right now. So we have a terrific moderator. Moderator is Megan Good. She is the perfect person to kind of lead this show because she's an exemplar of how to go from intern to a senior VP. She's currently a senior VP for Leidos for technology integration. She leads technology acceleration, and she does corporate investments for enterprise, cyber, and AI. Very exciting. She's a luminary of the Cyber Guild, and she was awarded Top Exec to Watch by Washington Executive. So that's our amazing moderator, Megan Good. And next we have our panelists, and she'll share more about them when she comes on stage. Our panelists is our Carol Glennon. She's a senior director of cybersecurity for Walgreens. Nicole Bucala, she's the CEO for DataBee. And we have Andy Sauer, a friend of mine, CEO of Blue Sentinel. Yep. And Dr. Shauna Sweet, program director for DARPA. So you are in for a real treat. So let's hear it for our next panel. John is not here today.
I'm so eager. I was saying things even before the music stopped. But hello, everybody, and thank you for having us here. I'm really excited to kick off this topic, to get into a little bit of technology and a whole lot about what's next as we go with our speakers. Now, what you see on stage are some tremendous leaders who are spanning all different sectors, because cybersecurity isn't just one sector, and it's not just one moment and snapshot in time. We're continually evolving. So over the course of this conversation, we're going to explore a few themes around AI, around software, around quantum technologies, and really what we can all do to drive to more proactive resilience. So with that in mind, before we get going, I do have some questions planned, but would love your questions as well. We have a bit of time reserved for that, so please use the Whova app. I've got it. And we'll get to your questions as we go. So you guys ready?
Let's do it.
Let's dive in. All right. Well, the first topic that we're going to cover is a bit about AI. I imagine that's already come up today. I wasn't here, but I heard a lot of interactions about AI and the future of how that's working with our workforce. But we want to talk about how AI is transforming the speed and scale of cyber defense, both as a tool for us to use as better defenders, but it's also a tool that adversaries can take advantage of and exploit. So the question then becomes, how do we build trust between humans and AI, and how are we knowing when to lean on each? So to my panelists, and Andy, I'm going to start with you.
Sure.
How can organizations build trust in human-machine teaming so defenders remain empowered and ensure AI doesn't become a liability?
All right, so I think AI probably is starting from a position of liability. I think that AI currently is kind of reminiscent to me of like we've invented the first internal combustion engine, and I think collectively we all agree like that's a game changer. I don't think we've invented the car that's going to power yet, and we all just kind of see this powerful thing that's coming down the pipe, and we know it's going to do something, but I don't know about y'all, I'm not going to get in the first engine-powered car, right? I think AI needs to get better and further on its maturity path before we really talk about trusting it to do critical functionality. I don't know about y'all, but I see a lot of what I think of as like, there's a lot of horse and buggies going around, and in the back, there's a guy with like a cotton candy machine that's powered by an engine, and they're like, look, it's a mobile cotton candy machine powered by AI. And you're like, yeah, you're kind of implying the whole thing moves, but it's really just you doing this thing that's not super relevant. And I think that's kind of where we're at with AI right now. We all see there's potential there, but I wouldn't build anything critical on it yet. If you're dabbling in AI and using it, I think we've all had the experience. Like sometimes it spits out some really bad ideas or bad things or bad code, and we're not quite there yet. So I think the trust depends on it getting better. As defenders, and that's kind of our take on things, we're defenders, and that's what we need. We need to have that safety perspective. We have to get things right. Where I think AI is already a liability is attackers don't need to worry about safety. And in a lot of cases, they're purposefully trying to get past that. The metaphor I think of is like, forget the engine, imagine we've just invented missiles. It's a very easy thing to do, generally, to point in the direction of a target and launch a missile and have some sort of impact. The engineering problem to shoot down missiles with other missiles is like 1,000x in terms of complexity and difficulty. So as defenders, it's gonna be very hard, and we have our work cut out for us. We have to keep pace. We're obviously in an arms race. We have to keep pace with the adversaries, but we have to do it in a safe way. And in general, to sort of sum up my point on that, it just has to get better. We have to keep working it. I think we're not quite there yet.
Mm-hmm. Well, thanks, Andy. And Nicole, I was wondering if you could do a counterpoint. Because, Andy, I think a lot of your background and the work that you do today with a lot of small and medium-sized businesses to then something like scale that you have at Comcast. Nicole, what do you see?
Yeah, absolutely. So I think about it in kind of a dual framework. So, there's applications to use AI to look at facts and to perform research and then analysis on those facts. And then there's the concept of using AI to potentially make decisions. Mm-hmm. And I think the opportunity is across both of those areas. There's been a lot of research that shows when you apply AI algorithms to information on the internet, what comes back isn't necessarily trustworthy. Sometimes the AI will reference articles that maybe you shouldn't be looking at, right? Or maybe even make up references. That has also happened. But where AI can be very useful is if you know and you trust the data set. And so the immediate place I see for it to be used at scale is for jobs that are doing analysis in a large corporation. For example, if you're a financial analyst, you have a spreadsheet or you have a database of data that you know and you trust, and it is your job to do some research and analysis and presentation on that data. Well, the AI can actually help automate what's otherwise manual tasks when it comes to parsing and writing algorithms and graphics and visual representations of the data. But that's because you know the data and you trust the data. On the decision front, I think we have a lot of opportunity as AI engineers to work on the computational logic there. I had a lot of fun last spring going to the top 3 most widely used generative AI tools and asking 2 simple computational questions. And if you go ahead and do this, you may find it's now correct, because this was a couple months ago, but I would be interested to know. The first question I asked was, What is the 9th digit of pi? None of the tools could get it correct. No one got it correct. That was shocking. The second question was I had it convert a short form to a long form UMTS ID, which is a simple modulo calculation. You have your calculator, right? Mod. None of them could get a simple modulo calculation correct. So this was concerning and surprising because when you think about AI, it's computation, right? And computation is logic, and that's mathematics. And so in order to be able to use AI to make decisions, we're going to have to make some leaps and bounds on the computational logic.
Get it. And wow, talking computational logic and math, I can see you over there, Sean.
Yeah.
Itching, ready. our mathematician view, but I think also your view from DARPA is really one of what is next in this space, and then how are we applying this on pretty critical missions. So what's your thought to human-machine teaming?
So human-machine teaming is like, and so let's take this notion of pi, right? So part of the reason that I find this exciting, right, is that I think in order to empower defenders, I think one of the things we have to think about, we talk about hardware, software, humanware. Okay, one of the spaces where we know is actually true is we're thinking about AI as part of systems. We actually typically have an underspecification of what we're looking for those systems to achieve, what we're looking for those algorithms actually to do, and to actually match up what our objectives are with regards to having those algorithms act on data, and then the units that those algorithms are actually using in computation. I will tell you that when it comes to the 9th digit of pi, there was zero surprise on my side that they all fell on their face, okay? So I think that in order to empower defenders, what I would argue is that there needs to be actually a return as well to first principles for mathematically, right? And to also think about and to have an opportunity for actually really exciting education. As much as we want to anthropomorphize some of the generative models right now, humans are not AI, AI are not humans. And not only are the success modes distinct, but important for cyber defense is that the failure modes are also distinct. And I think one of the things that we need to do as defenders in this cyberspace as we continue to integrate and think about integrating automated processes into our systems is to recognize that every time you build a system, you build both objectives and expectations into that system that you then subsequently codify. Think about how you have codified that and also according to what threat model. And if somewhere deep down inside, right, deep inside, some of the assumptions that you are making is with regards to a human adversary, even a really smart one, it may be time for you to start rethinking your cyber defense posture.
That's a great point. And you know, I also think there's one of how all of those come together and how you're able to do that, how we get to the data, to the decision power. And Carol, I'm wondering for you from a retail perspective, from a critical infrastructure perspective that Walgreens really operates in that space, what are you thinking as far as human-machine teaming and how you're empowering defense?
Yeah, I mean, for us, I really think about it in practical terms because we are faced with opportunities to use AI throughout many businesses today. People are eager to reap the benefits that they think are going to be available to them. We don't want to impede that, but we want to make it safe. So our ethos is really keep a human in the loop. You know, think about that as AI drafts, but people approve ultimately. Having that ethos and applying it to a lot of the decisions that come across our desk can help to keep people centered on a North Star that is one that is grounded in safety. Secondarily, use your red team. Red teams are used to poking and prodding and uncovering hidden gaps or risks that we haven't thought about previously, not just in your models with prompt injection, but also think about red teaming AI-infused tools like agents that your organization has adopted. Your tool might unintentionally have access to sensitive data stores that you didn't know about, but a red team could help you to uncover that. I think lastly, you know, partner with teams that are going to be putting guardrails in place. Your governance teams, they know well the data that is important to them and what they're trying to protect. So partner with them early on to create a blueprint around what's important, and then you can proceed against defending that blueprint together.
I had a comment on the red team thing. So I was perusing Reddit as I spend way too much time doing, but there's a cybersecurity subreddit. If you're not there, it's phenomenal. Somebody recently from a red team perspective talked about how they're beating current defenses we have for AI. I see a lot of rise in AI prompt monitoring and interception. We're doing like SSL decryption so we can read what prompts you're asking, what data you're supplying to it. And they said from a red team perspective, they were running tests by using images to bypass it and using steganography to like embed information in an image that the defenses we've created to try to detect your prompts we can't see as defenders. So there's all these interesting ways that people are coming up with to already bypass, and they wouldn't know that if they didn't have a red team working that problem and trying things outside the box.
Right, I think it's all evolving so quickly, all at the same time. And to your point, Andy, it's an arms race too.
Yeah.
There's interesting techniques, but great practical tips there too. So I also think AI has come at a time where our organizations and our environments are all becoming much more software defined. And so the introduction of more and more vulnerabilities, more and more across our critical supply chain and our infrastructure, shared infrastructure, and yet now we also have this view of how we need to verify those systems and understand what's in all of that software all the time and what's happening. And there's a lot of evolving capabilities there. So Shauna, I'm going to start with you, but what breakthroughs do you see on the horizon for verifying software functionality, safety, to Carol's point, and ultimate security at scale?
Yeah, so there are several of my colleagues at DARPA, especially if we're talking about software-defined capabilities. There has been a push at DARPA, beginning really back with the HACMS program several years ago. And as we move forward, there's a number of programs coming out of DARPA that are looking at the application of formal methods to the verification of software capabilities. And so this goes everything from if I have a function, right? One of the things that we want to be able to do when we specify, again, you tell me talk a lot about specifications. I might spend some time thinking about this problem, right? So if we're talking about critical systems, you might have the code, you might have specifications. Specifications are a natural language. I have code that is in, well, depending on the system, it could be any number of options, okay? But then I also want to have a set of mathematical proofs and other tools that I would use to essentially verify specific properties about that software. And I think some of the really exciting work that's coming out now where people are thinking about it is not just to have the verification of specific functionality, but especially as we think about systems of systems, right? And essentially software-defined capabilities where what we really want, right, the vision, is to have a flexible architecture and scaffolding for the ability to flexibly kind of pick and choose and select and integrate almost on demand particular software functionality. That's the dream. And I think right now there's a lot of really exciting work to starting to think about how do we actually verify the specific safety properties at the time of composition. It's a very kind of like active and exciting space of research, still research, but we're making I see a lot of really interesting energy in that space.
Yeah, no, and you make a great point of it's research, it's composition, because that's when you're using it, which is also in this whole supply chain of how do we know what's happening at each time. And I wonder, how is that working at scale? So Carol or Nicole?
Yeah, I'd love to see more teams using things like continuously automated software bill of materials, really understanding what is packaged into your code before you promote it. I do think there's an opportunity to use AI and understand, are there any hidden dependencies in your code? Can we crawl that code before you commit? And maybe uncover a dependency that we didn't know was there before when we were using just purely human peer reviews. I think that there's an opportunity there to bring AI to bear on these code bases in one fell swoop and really start to inventory what dependencies we have and make it a lot easier. When we face things like 0 days, it's that continuous inventory that we're going to turn to keep the organization safe. So I do think that's an opportunity for AI, but I think that the software bill of materials is where we can really make sure that we're tracking our dependencies in a safe way, especially if those dependencies are AI related.
And I would say that's an opportunity for innovation, at a large company. That software bill of materials, anytime you have any sort of AI or generative AI, you have a long legal review, you have a privacy review, you have a security review, and sometimes people aren't actually sure what they should review and what they should be looking for. And so there's a great opportunity, I think, for innovation around providing structure, organization, and real-time updates around vulnerabilities and other concerns with various AI models that are now going to impact those software bills of material. If you procure software these days, there's now AI addendums, right? And some companies are coming out with policies that you cannot procure software that has AI in it unless the AI arrives turned off and you have the option to turn it on, right? And so I think that just the injection of AI chatbots, AI search engines, it's sparking a lot of conversations, right, around how do you make sure that the usage of that software gives the same fidelity of outcome and value that it did prior to the AI. And this is a big puzzle. So for all the innovators in the audience, I would highly encourage anyone who's interested in that topic to put some thought into it.
Well, I think it's also figuring out what's the distinction about some of those capabilities, because it can sound like everything is addressing this challenge, right, of AI for better software understanding. And so if you are one of those innovators, what is your differentiation you're bringing? It's really important here to help enable trust.
Just as a comment to tag on some of the reviews that you just mentioned in the structure, foreign concepts down in the SMB, especially on the small side. The review is generally an email out to the IT department, which is often 1 or 2 people, like, hey, is this a good idea for us to upload? This is a real email I've gotten recently. Is it okay if we send our entire sales, everything from the last 20 years to ChatGPT to like help us write new proposals? And I was like, no. But they're like, yeah, but this is business critical. We need this. All of our competitors are doing it. Everyone's writing their proposals with AI. This could take what's hard to do at scale with human beings who have to write all that text and do all that labor and tighten this up. But we have to say, no, you can't just give it all that data because one, that's a government contractor and you have government data and they don't like that. But also like, hey, maybe don't just give everything proprietary to these models that may train others on the work that you've already sort of done. So the safety thing's big to me, and a big challenge in my mind, especially again in the SMB space, is this arms race. We must move on it. We have to adopt it. Everyone else is doing it, which might just be a lot of hype in some cases, but is actually real, and some people are getting outcomes out of it. As defenders, being the folks who shouldn't be saying no, but should be saying, maybe not quite that way, but I understand the need you have. Let's find a better way. This is going to be very challenging to try to pump the brakes on this, especially as it's just compounding and getting better, more capable, and you're falling behind, or that's the feeling you have if you're not using it today. You're like, what am I missing out? I'm not home right now using my Claude subscription. He could be writing code for us right now, but I'm here, Maybe that's in the back of my head, and everyone's starting to feel that,
Well, actually, if I could, I think this the need for speed, right, to go really fast. One of the things that's actually really exciting is, especially if you're thinking about, please don't put your proprietary data into ChatGPT. I think that one of the things that's exciting, though, is that also if you think about, again, what are these models looking to do, right? What is the objective? Why do you want to use them? There's a lot of really interesting technologies right now in the data privacy space, right? Whether that's, there are kind of strategies for calculation over fully encrypted data. There's strategies for utilization of privacy enhancing technologies, right? There's all kinds of things that are now coming out that actually could still allow you to get creatively to yes. But I think it's about how do we creatively get to yes in a way that's safe, that also successfully protects the equities while maintaining computation against the core logic that actually matters. And so things like everything from privacy preserving technologies to include different strategies for semantic encoding as well as encryption. I think there's lots of layers that you could kind of place on the systems.
Yeah, and okay, well, I'm going to add another level of complexity into this conversation then. Since we talked about an arms race, we've talked about encryption, you just said, Shauna. So let's talk about quantum. So there's kind of 2 sides of this, quantum computing and the rise of quantum computing that makes it possible then to break the encryption standards that we've had. And then there's also quantum technologies and how actually building up the kinds of environments that we have and augmenting our existing environments with these technologies that we'll see in the nearer future, maybe then the computing future. But I know it's there. It's just out there. And so for all of us here, how are you seeing the rise of all of these technologies reshaping cybersecurity as we know it, both in terms of risks and opportunities? Who wants to go?
I'll fall on the sword first.
You're falling. Okay, good.
Yeah, so I think one of the things I think is really important to remember, right, is that a lot of people will say, well, why does quantum matter? It's not here today, right now, right? And I think the thing to remember, right, is how fast does change actually happen, right? If you look across our critical infrastructure, if you look across our systems, I think you've brought up a couple of times, right, the notion of networked, the extent to which all of our capabilities are effectively networked. I think that we underestimate today, right, how much effectively our ability to function in a data space is sufficiently integrated, and how much we rely on encryption day to day to actually successfully execute a set of business processes. We need to be able to continue to do that safely. The fact that quantum might be X number of years away, how, and I'm sure that there's folks in the panel who also have kind of a day-to-day sense of this, right? How fast are we able to actually effectively change and implement across all of those critical systems new encryption standards? And so I think one of the benefits, again, to go back to what empowers us as opposed to, why are we all in deep trouble? But in terms of what empowers us, it's actually a chance to take stock today, right? In what ways and under what conditions and when and where and how are you actually looking to effectively secure your data using technologies that actually rely on standards for encryption potentially, where one, you aren't meeting the standard today, or, right, you have an opportunity to say, if we were to be in a place where, quantum computing was potentially a threat, are we resilient? And I think taking stock, you said, right, how do we kind of keep, maintain an S-bomb, right? You can also think about, right, a C-bomb, right, a cryptographic bill of materials. And maybe it's time for us to start thinking about, and there are standards for cryptographic bill of materials, right? Maybe is it time for us to start thinking about integrating that into our understanding of software?
So you hit a key point, because my bias is always for small businesses and sort of the struggle of being a small organization and trying to keep pace with all this. There's a concept of the cyber poverty line that maybe people have heard of. I see a lot of these technologies, especially something like quantum, just putting more organizations under the cyber poverty line. To your point, these things already take us way too long to adopt and address vulnerabilities, adopt new technologies, and move on things. Something this breaking that could break down so many of the business processes and societal processes at this point could be such a game changer that, one, it could be absolutely chaotic, but I think post-quantum is making enough strides where we should be able to handle it as, like, broadly the internet, and the providers on the internet managing it should be able to move. I just think of all the small organizations and how much vulnerability that could create when it's available. Already being difficult to move them could just make it more and more that people fall back. And I know later in our topics, we may talk about responsibility and the cross-sector stuff and who needs to be doing what. I'll just always talk about in small organizations how difficult it is just to keep pace and how much help and reliance we need in the small space on the large providers and the technology leaders.
And Carol, what do you think?
There are opportunities today to start getting ready. Building your crypto inventory. That's something that we can do without buying software. That's something that you can do today. Putting your inventory together and start with what matters most. Think about your most sensitive data and just simply take inventory of, what are we using for cryptography on that particular data or that system. And then moving forward, think about how you talk to your organization about this. People might think in their minds, well, post-quantum, it's still a long ways off. Explain what harvest now, decrypt later means so that your organization understands why testing quantum-safe technology and quantum-safe algorithms now makes sense. It makes sense to test them now on our most important data in a safe space while we still have time, because that data could be taken, it could be stored, and then decrypted later, post-quantum. So I think getting that narrative right and learning how to really talk to your board about that makes sense to do now. And again, these are things we can do with very low investment. Of course, it's a matter of time and intentionality, but it will be worth it in the long run. And you can talk with your board or your executive team about moving your organization in a post-quantum healthy direction in the meantime.
And I would say, to piggyback on that, the theme, just to up-level it a little bit, is dual use, right? So I'll name 3 technologies. 2 of them are on the slide here. Packet capture. Packet capture is very helpful for investigations. Packet capture has also been used for dual use. AI, right? People are using AI to write ransomware, malware. Quantum, right? Quantum computing to break encryption in the future. And so I think we all worry about this. It all keeps us up at night. We think about what to say to our board and what to do. But I think there's an opportunity as a community for greater focus in public-private partnerships around how to get ahead of the potential dual use of emerging technologies. And so when technologies do start to come out, people get really excited. Oh, let's go use this for the intended purpose, and then they start to worry in a reactive way about alternative uses. So again, for any innovators in the room, any entrepreneurs, I think there's again an opportunity for greater focus around dual use.
Well, and it's a perfect segue too of what we can do about it then, right? With all of this opportunity or all of this complexity we just talked about, whichever way you want to look at it, all of these opportunities for adversaries, what are some practical steps that enterprises and agencies can take? I'm going to start with you, Nicole. Is that okay?
Sure.
Since you teased the question.
So I'll talk a little bit maybe about what we specialize in and what we're doing. So DataBee as a Comcast company is a commercial version of some internal inventions that our CISO developed and is used across the enterprise. And it's specifically converting the organization to a very data-driven organization where the chief talent that we hire on the security side, they're data analysts. We can train people what vulnerabilities to look for. We can train people on methods of attack. But to have a data-driven mindset, to understand how to work with data, how to hold certain variables constant, how to understand confounding variables, that's a skill that people learn in school. And so that's what we optimize hiring for. And when we think about our security stack and our architecture, we optimize for what we call a data fabric approach, where we have a global unified data set, and we use that data to answer the key questions that we have to answer from a risk and a compliance and a security perspective across the board. And so, it's our role, actually, we're going out to other enterprises and encouraging other enterprises, instead of thinking about procuring solutions to deal with a certain type of threat or set of threats or set of vulnerabilities, to instead think about how do we look at all the questions we have to answer, all the evidence that we have to provide, how do we look at that from a data perspective instead? And it's just been such a fascinating journey to see how much it can unlock for folks as far as operational and efficiency gains, let alone the obvious risk and security gains. But it's also a challenge. It's really encouraging people to think very differently about security and risk.
Yeah.
I agree. I think there are some opportunities to zoom out, increase aperture, some tactical examples I would give just in terms of keeping up with the pace of defense and really matching what's out there for tooling that our attackers have is think about things like pre-authorizing automated containment methods. This is going to allow for things like token revoke, immediate isolation of an endpoint, for example. Those things can stop an attacker in their tracks without human intervention, but they're also very easy to walk back if an error is made. So think about doing that. Also think about talking to your teams about measuring success in time to safety. We have these other measurements that we've traditionally used in response and defense teams, time to detect, for example. All of those are still very important metrics in the chain, but time to safety gets people empowered to drive the right behavior in their team. If we're thinking about time to safety, then we're thinking about automated containment methods, and that's the type of behavior and thinking that we want to drive, and we can use data to make that happen. The patterns are already there for us. We can use those patterns to reinforce the automated behavior. So I think there are some opportunities there to keep teams moving forward. And then from a human perspective, continuous purple teaming. Purple teaming continuously will help you to uncover gaps that you didn't know were there. It's a great opportunity to bring your red team together with your blue team and teach the blue team more about what an attacker fingerprint for a particular type of attack looks like. And it will also help you to measure what your recovery time really looks like in real life, using the scaffolding of what could have been an actual incident to prove that out.
Awesome examples.
Thank you.
So I think
really great.
your organizations are the ones to solve these problems, the emerging problems. The one thing I'll add as commentary to this is don't let this stuff distract you if you're not already nailing the basics. Mm-hmm. AI is not going to help you engineer yourself out of bad architecture. I mean, it'll help you, but it's not going to rebuild your architecture if you're already having problems with people just clicking links and having local admin so that they can execute the malware that's now optimized by an adversarial AI. You probably don't need to start thinking about this next level stuff if you're already still under that cyber poverty line. You shouldn't not consider it, and it shouldn't be part of your plan. But again, don't be distracted and immediately go to like, hey, we need to start intercepting AI prompts right now and figure out what our people are uploading if like you don't have any control at all yet. That's not where I would start.
Yeah, I think there's been a couple of, so anytime I hear somebody talk about metrics, I'm like, ooh, metrics, all right. So there was what can we measure? But I think there's this really exciting opportunity when you think about defining metrics for defense, right? Again, I'm gonna come back to what are the assumptions that we're necessarily making in terms of the threat model, right? Against what are we looking to defend against? And so if your metrics are something like, right, time to respond, right? Remember, what does generative AI actually achieve if we're thinking about from a dual use and weaponization standpoint? Frictionless generation. It's cheap and it's fast. It's almost instantaneous, right? And so when you think about the metrics that you want to put in place for SLAs for a system, right, just kind of like thinking off the cuff, right? Think about what adversarial you potentially are up against, right? And what's going to make the biggest impact in terms of, right, signal to noise in terms of monitoring a system. And I think, to kind of, as well go into what is exciting, right? I think that as we think about AI, automation, systems of systems, engineering, right? I think that this is a really exciting place where for me, so I'm a statistician by training, right? Which is that we can bring in kind of math, cryptography, systems engineering, and there's this really exciting opportunity. I think the zeitgeist right now is to talk a lot about AI, got it, right? And I understand that. And at the same time, there is this really unique, just like a purple team, this opportunity for us to bring people from across disciplines together to start thinking about differently, how do we really institute a paradigm shift in how we think about cyber defense?
Yeah. No, I think we've talked about lots of different paradigms shifting all at the same time, but is it one macro shift? That it's all happening right now? And I think with that in mind, I want to ask my last question before we'll go to the Whova app. So if you have questions, one more ping there. But it takes all of us, right? It is something about collective defense and this next generation of defense. And so, we are from different industries all up here together, and I'm just wondering what you think the unique role or responsibility is from maybe your industry or sector, and how do we really make this cyber defense ecosystem sustainable from that role? So, Andy, I'm going to start with you. Small and medium businesses.
So, the previous panel that talked about the challenge with senior citizens and the scams facing them, Steve at the end, shout out to Steve, I love that he called out Meta. Not that we're going to pick on Meta, but he called out providers. He called out big tech and said there's a responsibility, there's a burden, there's a duty that you have that you're currently not fulfilling. I think as all this matures, Tatiana Bolton might also be in here. She was on my podcast recently, which is a great little podcast called The Watchers. You should check it out. But we talked about shifting left. And in software development, if you guys are familiar, we talked about shifting left as like you move security thinking earlier in the development lifecycle so you get a more secure product. I think of cyber responsibility, and I'm wanting to see more shifting left. The big creators of technology, the technology vendors, the chat GPTs or OpenAIs, Microsoft and everyone else, I think we need to start demanding more from them from a responsibility and a safety standpoint. It's amazing, again, that they're giving us all this internal combustion engine that you can go off and do some crazy stuff with. But it shouldn't be able for you to very easily exploit it with your lack of true expertise and all the workings of it. So I think we need to demand more from our vendors, and I think they have a responsibility and a burden and a duty to protect the public by putting these tools out there in a safe and secure way. Is that controversial enough? I can go deeper.
Well, I can build on your vendor comment.
Let's go.
So one of the most rewarding things about being the founder of DataBee, a Comcast company, was essentially creating a commercial version of something that a very large practitioner team used every day for a wide variety of uses. And this was seen as unique. Yes, there are practitioners that have resigned from organizations and founded vendor companies, and there are national defense practitioners that resign from the government and start their own companies. But the concept of a CISO in her organization actually going to the board and requesting funds to create a commercial version of a technology that so helped them to help others. That's novel. And I think we can see more of that. I think we can see more corporations starting to sponsor and finance innovation in cybersecurity, not just for the benefit of themselves, but for the benefit of others. And I think we can see more vendors start to partner from stage zero with illustrious and very advanced and knowledgeable practitioners. And it helps the product management cycle go a bit faster, because rather than say, well, I have an idea, let me go talk to 10 customers on the street and have them poke holes in it, you're starting on the foundation of something that practitioners are already using every day. And you're really trying to see, okay, it works for this organization, but how can I make a version of this that now works for other organizations? And so you get to see the reward, which is how many other people you help very, very quickly. And that's very satisfying if you're a vendor.
Absolutely. Shauna?
Yeah, sure. So, I think one of the things that really I am so excited about right now in terms of kind of where some of the work that DARPA has done, where I'm now seeing, and I take zero credit for this, right? So I'm just a new program manager there, but seeing some of the work, especially in high assurance software and kind of what high assurance means in the space, right? So at DARPA and in my work, 80% is good. I don't care about the 80%. I don't even care about the 20%. Right? I care about the fraction of the fraction. I care about the edge case. I care that we have to be right all of the time when I probably have no data to base my, to use an algorithm, right? There's nothing there. This is by definition, it is an off nominal event, right? And so how do we build high assurance reasoning and high assurance analytics in that space? And so those are the questions that keep me up at night. And so in the space of cyber defense, right, where we're often looking at, again, still off-nominal scenarios, what I really like is to see kind of all of the intuition and all of the engineering and research that's come out of DARPA now kind of coming into, right, kind of a very different kind of point in its growth and adoption, because I think scale and doing things at scale, even, from everybody, from, smaller companies all the way up, but being able to adopt formal methods into tooling and pipelines, it's so rewarding, right, to see some of those ideas actually become tractable in the space as we kind of combine that as well with red teaming, purple teaming, just as one of a toolbox of really robust strategies. And that's been really exciting to watch.
I agree. I think a lot of the standards development that's coming out of great organizations like DARPA is development we've never seen before. We're also getting a lot more information than we've ever gotten before, faster than we've gotten it from our governmental agencies that we partner with. So I think that there's always going to be a role for that. The faster we can get high quality intelligence, the faster we can move our teams towards action. From a cloud provider perspective, for example, I think just making good security choices economical incentivizes good behavior. It's really hard when teams have to decide between security or another feature, and it really comes down to cost. Make it easier to make that decision. Bake it into a lot of the product offerings. I think that is a natural evolution. We are starting to see that, but that could go faster. And from an individual business perspective, there are a lot of opportunities for all of us. Join your sector's ISAC, Information Sharing and Analysis Center. Contribute information there. That helps to make our industries more resilient across the board. You will be contributing to the ecosystem overall. That doesn't cost anything in most cases. You can do that for very little investment, but that will help you contribute to your sector.
I love the point you just made about make it easier to make the secure choice. And again, another sort of challenge that I think providers are finally catching on to is don't trust the user to secure their own stuff. Users have a responsibility. Security is everyone's game. But speaking of that shift left sort of mentality of cyber practitioners, I think we also need to shift things off of the user. They've got enough that they're going with. It's going to be harder for them to try to decide that single sign-on is the appropriate mechanism for how they should get into this business app. That's what we need to do. We need to make it easier for them to use the tool so they don't bypass the security. And on single sign-on, if you're a cloud provider or a SaaS provider in here and you charge an enterprise SKU for SSO, you're in the wrong. That should be free for everybody. If I'm paying you, not free, paying you, SSO shouldn't be an add-on. That's my hill, and I'll die on it.
We got a plug and a soapbox moment. I like it.
I'll stand up.
All right, well, I am looking through the questions that we have from our audience, and thank you for submitting some in. I think we've addressed a few of them through our conversation. So the one I want to ask on as we were talking about roles and responsibilities is, outside of government, is there a sector or industry you see as having the responsibility for capacity building, like workforce and training? Anybody?
I think we all have a shared responsibility. I do a lot of work to develop our next generation pipeline in every job I'm in. We always have a steady flow of mentors or mentees that are a part of our team. I actively encourage my leaders to be a mentor to others in a structured fashion. We always have college students who are looking for internships joining our team. For me, it's one of the most important things I can do is to grow that next generation of cyber leaders so that there are people who are ready to take these seats. So I think it's a shared responsibility. I don't see it as one particular organization that really, or group or sector that has to fill that. I think that we all have a part to play there in making this an exciting, welcoming, inviting place to be, where people can turn up with the skills that they have, whether that be amazing mathematicians, data scientists, excellent red teamers who can execute on the ground, people who can help small businesses to put their frameworks together from the ground up because they understand NIST deeply. We can teach people how to do those things. We can recruit the right people. But all of us have a part to play in making sure that they have a seat at the table, they have an opportunity, a mentor to talk to and get help from.
Great answer. I think in the
Maybe a
interest of-
controversial response, just
Okay.
like this, but I reserve the right to retract it because I haven't fully thought this out. In general, I think whoever's positioned to make the most profit or money out of some of these things has that same amount of responsibility to make sure it's done safely. I'm totally fleshed that thought out, but like the more that you're going to be able to extract from something, I think about the tech companies like OpenAI, they might be able to say, hey, the security of it's not our problem. We've just given you this amazing new tool, do with it as you will. I think that's a cop-out on their part. I think they have a responsibility. I think it's primarily their responsibility because they're creating the potential weapon for which we should have some control and some safety around it.
There you go, fair point. All right, and going to the next question here, as we're wrapping up our time, this one feels really interesting to receive. Most boards' eyes would glaze over when you bring these topics up. So how important is it for boards to have a qualified technical expert to do the translation and articulate why you should care?
I have a response to that actually will challenge the premise, which is that you don't need a technical expert. And if you approach security and risk and compliance with a data-driven approach, and you can measure things accurately, then you can start holding business leaders, people who may not live and breathe cyber and risk every day, you can start holding them accountable for certain behaviors, and that's your first line of defense. So the first goal is to be able to measure someone accurately, and then when you can measure them accurately, you can actually start to describe in layman's terms, what do some of those measurements mean? So for example, if you're helping someone to see where they have gaps in the defenses that they've procured technologically to secure their digital environment, you want to be able to help them understand who owns this control, where does the data come from, what action can you take to close that gap. And so when you get to an elegant framework where everyone understands what's measured and they understand what they have to do to take action on a negative measurement, you don't need a technical expert anymore. It's a natural board discussion. And this is one of the things that I think is brilliant about what has happened at Comcast is we actually have dashboards that we use to do this, and we're able to hold every executive accountable to a cyber score. And so these things are discussed in those meetings. It's pretty cool.
Awesome answer. And as I look through the rest of our questions that we have here, I think there's a lot that's specific on some quantum computing. We stirred up some thoughts there, a bit about how you delete data from AI models over time. But in the interest of our time, I want to go to us looking ahead. So just as a wrap-up, rapid fire for us across the board, What is the single biggest opportunity or the most exciting thing that you can think about in the near-term horizon for advancing cyber resilience? Oh, man. Want to go first, Nicole?
Sure. I would say starting to teach 5- and 6-year-old children about how to be safe online. That's the next generation of people.
There you go. How about you, Carol? Let's go down the line.
Yeah, +1 to that, absolutely. I also think I talked a little bit about automated, pre-authorized automated intervention in containment. I think that there are big opportunities there for autonomous defense. I imagine a day where there are agents that can not only take that containment action, but they can also undertake instantaneous remediation and provide an analyst-ready extract of evidence where you can understand exactly what action was taken, and you can even press revoke if you need to. So I think if we can move in that direction, it's going to allow us to keep pace with some of our attacker developments as well.
Awesome.
So my answers might be surprising because I maybe come off as like an AI skeptic, but I'm actually a pretty firm believer in it. I think AI presents the most unique and interesting opportunity for defense going forward. And I think AI, if you understand, I don't understand it. I'm gonna say something I probably shouldn't say. If you believe what it's gonna be capable of, the seminal moment, the singularity moment, is the moment it can compound and improve itself. And it should be capable of that in the end because it's gonna always, at some point, end up writing better code than a human being. We're gonna be very flawed. The whole reason we have programming languages is because we need something that we can interact with that gets translated and compiled into something a computer can interact with. I think AI is gonna get to a point where it can have a much more native sort of reaction. With that, I think we may be headed toward a future where there's something of a democratization of software, where right now we're so dependent on vendors and we're so dependent on SaaS and the cloud. This could be an engine by which now if you have an AI model that can do what we're all assuming it's going to end up being able to do, write you an app off of a prompt, assume that ends up being the case, I think there's a lot of net benefit that could come from that democratization where now you get exactly what you need to support your business, to support your threat model, to support what you're capable of from a defensive standpoint, just by prompting the AI to help you build it.
Oh man,
I set you up. I was
like, oh man, we're vibe coding. Okay, I mean, actually, so I'm gonna go with a counter to that, which is that one of the first times when I heard that somebody absolutely borked a generative model was one of my much younger performers, and they spoke in Gen Alpha. I don't understand it. I feel really old. But anyway, so they basically used slang, and the model just, not only did it fall on its face, it did a whole bunch of weird things, right? Now, I read this prompt. I had no idea what it said. I could not, repeat back to you what was there. But what I took from that, right, is that one of the things that is most exciting to me is not what AI is going to do in the future. It's about the fact that if we teach the 6-year-olds about how to be safe on the internet, that there is this incredible opportunity that with all of this new tech, that the creativity and kind of the innovation that comes from unexpected places right now in terms of the folks who are just coming up and coming into the space, right? That's where, I've said paradigm shift a few times now, but I think that's where some of the greatest innovation can come from. Because not to be too DARPA about it, right? But like AI's here, okay? Transformers are here, got it. Stable diffusion, check. What's next? Right? And I think the what's next, that's not AI's job, right? I think that's our job. And I think one of the things that's so incredible is that that comes from really deeply unexpected places at times, and I'm really looking forward to that.
Well, and to wrap us up, I would say for me, what is the most exciting is that we're all in this together, and that as we're driving forward with resilience, I hope today you learned a few things that you're more interested in and can follow up on, because the future is coming and we're all part of it. You heard it here. So thank you all for your attention and your questions. Good job. Thank you, panel.